The evacuation queue stretched across the entire floor of Port Station Kepler, a massive concrete platform orbiting above Earth. Thomas stood with his daughter Grace, holding her small hand tightly. Around them, thousands of people pushed and shouted, desperate to escape the dying planet below. The sky above Earth had turned a sickly brown color weeks ago, and the air had become poison. No one could survive down there anymore. Thomas was 40 years old, with dark hair turning gray at the temples. His face was lined with worry, but his eyes were kind. He had raised Grace alone for the past 8 years after her mother left them. Every day had been a struggle, but he never let Grace see how scared he was. She was his entire world. Grace was only 8 years old, small for her age, with her father's kind eyes and her mother's dark curls. She wore a faded pink jacket that Thomas had bought her 3 years ago. It was too small now, but she refused to wear anything else. She carried a stuffed rabbit named Pepper that had belonged to her since she was a baby. Pepper was falling apart, with one eye missing and stuffing coming out of one ear, but Grace would not leave without it. The lottery system for the transport ships had been running for 6 months. Millions of people applied for seats, but only thousands would get spots on the evacuation ships. Thomas had applied 3 times for 2 seats, one for himself and one for Grace. Each time his application was rejected. The odds were terrible. Millions were applying and there were only so many ships. 2 weeks ago something unexpected happened. Thomas received notification that he had won the lottery. 1 seat on the Meridian, a large commercial colony ship headed to Harmony Prime in the neutral zone. His heart had soared for exactly 3 seconds before crushing reality set in. 1 seat meant choosing. He could take the seat and leave Grace behind to die on Earth. Or he could give her the seat and stay on the dying planet. He had not slept properly since that notification arrived. Standing in the queue now, Thomas could not stop thinking about the impossible choice before him. Families around them were experiencing similar agonies. He saw a mother holding 2 children, knowing that maybe only 1 or 2 of them would make it onto a ship. He saw an old man standing alone, probably his entire family already gone or dead. He saw young couples holding each other, wondering if their love would survive separation by light years of space. The queue moved slowly forward. Station workers in yellow uniforms scanned credentials and checked names against the approved passenger lists. Some people were turned away. Thomas watched a young man break down crying as a worker shook his head and pointed him back toward the exit. The man's girlfriend screamed in protest, but security moved in quickly. "Dad, are we getting on the ship?" Grace asked, looking up at him. Her voice was small and uncertain. Thomas knelt down beside her, bringing his face level with hers. He pushed a strand of her dark curly hair away from her forehead. "I do not know yet, sweetheart," he said honestly. "We will find out when we reach the front of the line." "Will you be sad if we do not get on?" Grace asked. Thomas felt his heart break a little. He pulled her close and hugged her, burying his face in her hair. "I will be okay as long as I am with you," he said. It was not a complete lie, but it was not the whole truth either. They moved forward in the queue. Thomas watched the workers' table getting closer and closer. His hands were sweating. His stomach felt tight and twisted. He thought about Earth dying below them. He thought about the research reports that said no one could survive on the surface anymore. He thought about the news reports of riots and deaths and chaos as the planet's life support systems failed. When they were finally 3 people away from the table, Thomas made his decision. He would do the only thing he could do. He would let Grace take the seat. He would give his daughter a chance at life. He would stay behind and face whatever came next. It would break his heart to send her away, but it was the right thing to do. He squeezed Grace's hand and prepared to tell her. He prepared to say goodbye to his daughter. But then something unexpected happened. Thomas stepped up to the scanner table and the worker, a tired-looking woman with glasses, ran his credentials through the system. The machine beeped. "Okay, Thomas Williams, 1 seat on the Meridian," the worker said, looking at him. "Is anyone else with you?" "My daughter," Thomas said quietly. "But I only have 1 seat approval." The worker gestured for Grace to step forward. Thomas felt his heart breaking already. The worker scanned Grace's information quickly. The scanner made a strange sound, a beeping noise that was different from normal. The worker frowned at her screen. "That is odd," the worker said, more to herself than to them. "The system is showing 2 approvals. Let me try that again." She scanned Thomas's credential again. The scanner beeped twice. She looked confused. "Sir, I am not sure what happened, but the system is registering both of you for the Meridian," the worker said. 2 seats, both approved. Your credentials and your daughter's credentials. I think there might be an error, but the computer says you are both cleared to board." Thomas felt the world tilt. He stared at the worker, not believing what he was hearing. "Both of us?" he asked. "Are you sure?" "That is what the system says," the worker replied. She looked tired and did not seem interested in investigating further. "You are taking up boarding time. If you are both approved, go through to gate 7. Next." Thomas looked down at Grace. She was smiling, clutching Pepper to her chest. "We both get to go, Dad?" she said, her voice full of hope. Thomas nodded, unable to speak. He picked Grace up and held her close, tears running down his face. He did not know how the system had made this error. He did not know if it was luck or fate or just a glitching computer. But as he carried his daughter through gate 7 toward the waiting meridian, he held on to her as if she might disappear. They were going to survive. They were going together. 30 years had passed since Thomas and Grace boarded the meridian. For most of that time they slept in cryo chambers, their bodies frozen in a state between life and death. Time moved differently in cryosleep. To them it felt like only a few moments had passed. But when they woke up, 3 decades of the universe had moved on without them. Grace opened her eyes first. The cryo chamber hummed as it warmed her body back to normal temperature. She gasped for air, her lungs burning as they remembered how to breathe. Around her, other chambers were opening and other people were waking up. Some screamed. Some cried. Some simply lay there trying to remember who they were. A medical robot moved toward Grace with calm, mechanical efficiency. It checked her pulse, scanned her eyes, and confirmed that she was healthy. "Welcome to Harmony Prime," the robot said in a calm, artificial voice. "You have successfully completed the 30-year journey. Please proceed to the medical bay for full evaluation." Grace sat up slowly, her muscles weak and tired. She looked around the cryo chamber room until she saw her father's chamber nearby. Thomas was already waking up, his old body moving stiffly as the robot helped him out. When he saw Grace, he smiled weakly. "We made it," he said, his voice rough from disuse. Grace was no longer a small child. She was a woman now, 38 years old. Her dark curls had been preserved perfectly by the cryosleep, but her face had matured. She had her father's kind eyes and her mother's strong chin. She moved with confidence and intelligence. Thomas was now 66 years old. His hair had turned completely white during the journey. His face was more lined, though the cryosleep had slowed his aging. He moved more slowly than he used to, but his mind was still sharp. The colony on Harmony Prime was nothing like Earth. It was a paradise of green fields, blue skies, and crystal-clear water. The native Kelthians had welcomed the human colonists warmly. These beings were made of living crystal, with bodies that sparkled in the sunlight. They communicated through a complex system of color changes and harmonic vibrations. They were peaceful, intelligent, and genuinely interested in helping humanity rebuild. Grace discovered she had a gift for languages. Within months of arriving, she had learned the basic Kelthian communication system. Within a year, she had mastered it. She became a xenolinguist, someone who studied and translated alien languages. She was one of the most valuable people on the entire colony. The colony director, a man named Robert Chin, relied on her for all diplomatic communications. Thomas worked as a teacher, helping younger colonists understand the Kelthian culture and customs. He lived a quiet, peaceful life. Every evening, he and Grace would walk together through the colony gardens, and he would listen to her talk about her discoveries. These were good years. They had survived. They had made it. But everything changed on the day the Vorthan Dominion arrived. The massive ship appeared in the sky above Harmony Prime without warning. It was enormous, at least 10 times the size of any human vessel. Its hull was made of a material that seemed to shift between silver and black, as if it existed in more than one dimension at once. The ship descended slowly and the entire colony held its breath. The Vorthan Empress was named Kael'Terra, and she was unlike anything anyone on Harmony Prime had ever seen. She was tall, at least 7 feet, with a body made of overlapping sections of hard exoskeleton that covered her like armor. Her skin was a dark purple color that seemed to contain its own light. She had multiple limbs, some for walking, some for manipulation, and some whose purpose was unclear. Her head was angular and sharp, with large eyes that were completely black, like looking into the void of space. Around her exoskeleton, various sections would light up with different colors: blues, greens, reds, and purples. These color changes meant something. They were a language. Grace realized immediately that she was looking at one of the most advanced civilizations in the known universe. Kael'Terra toured the human colony with a small group of guards and advisors. She looked at the human buildings, the farms, the schools. She observed the humans working and playing. She watched everything with those vast black eyes, taking in every detail. The colony director arranged a formal reception in the main hall. Humans and Kelthians gathered to welcome their unexpected visitors. Grace was there, of course, standing near Robert Chin, ready to translate if needed. Thomas stood in the background, watching and observing as he always did. Kael'Thera entered the main hall and everyone fell silent. Her presence was overwhelming. It was not that she was threatening or dangerous. It was simply that she carried the weight of power and age and vast experience. She had conquered empires. She had ruled for longer than most humans lived. Grace began translating as the Empress spoke, her color patterns shifting through complex sequences. But then something strange happened. Kael'Thera's eyes moved across the room and locked directly onto Thomas. She stopped speaking. All her guards stopped moving. The color patterns on her exoskeleton froze, becoming a steady, bright blue. "Bring him here," Kael'Thera said, and her words came through the universal translator clearly. Her voice carried harmonics that made the air vibrate. Everyone looked confused. "Bring who?" Thomas was just an old human teacher, standing quietly in the back of the room. Why would the Empress of the Vorthan Dominion possibly be interested in him? "No," Grace said suddenly, stepping forward. She spoke in Vorthan, the color patterns of her words mimicking the Empress's own language. "I do not understand. This is my father. Why do you want him?" Kael'Thera's color patterns shifted to red and gold. Anger? Curiosity? Humans could not read alien emotions easily. "I do not require understanding from you, human," the Empress said, her voice cold and distant. "I require him." The Vorthan guards moved forward. They were tall and dangerous looking, with weapons that seemed to be made of solidified energy. They approached Thomas carefully, respectfully, as if they were handling something precious. Thomas stood still. He looked at his daughter, saw the fear in her eyes, and tried to give her a reassuring nod. He did not understand what was happening, but he knew one thing. He knew how to stay calm. He knew how to face uncertainty. He had done it his whole life. "I am ready," Thomas said to the guards. His voice was steady. As they led him toward the Empress, Thomas did not know that his entire life, all his choices, all his sacrifices, all his love for his daughter, had somehow reached across the stars and touched an ancient being of enormous power. He did not know that the Empress saw something in him that she had not seen in 10,000 years. He did not know that the most important conversation of his life was about to begin. The interior of the Vorthan flagship was nothing like anything Thomas had ever imagined. The walls seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, shifting and changing in ways that hurt to look at directly. The light came from everywhere and nowhere, casting no shadows. The floor felt solid beneath his feet, but when he looked down he could see through it to other levels below, and other levels below those, stretching down infinitely. Thomas was led through corridors that twisted in impossible directions. Sometimes he felt like he was walking upward, sometimes downward, sometimes sideways. His sense of direction became completely confused. The Vorthan guards moved with perfect confidence, their multiple limbs working in coordination as they navigated the strange geometry of their ship. Finally they arrived at a vast chamber. It was circular, with a ceiling so high that Thomas could barely see it. At the center of the chamber stood Kael'Thera, the Empress of the Vorthan Dominion. She was alone now, without her guards or advisors. She stood perfectly still, waiting. The guards gestured for Thomas to approach. He walked forward slowly, his old human body feeling small and fragile in this enormous space. His heart was beating fast. He had no idea what was about to happen. Would she hurt him? Would she ask him questions? Would she execute him for some unknown crime? He stopped a few feet away from the Empress and waited. Kael'Thera studied him in silence for a very long time. Her black eyes, like endless voids, swept across his entire body. The color patterns on her exoskeleton shifted slowly through different colors, blues, greens, yellows, and back to blue again. Thomas had no idea what these colors meant, but they seemed to indicate some kind of intense emotion or deep thinking. Finally the Empress spoke. Her voice carried strange harmonics that seemed to come from deep within her body. Even though she was speaking in human language translated through some kind of technology, Thomas could hear the weight of ages in her voice. "You made an impossible choice once," she said. "You stood in a queue on a dying planet, knowing that you could only save yourself or your young one. You chose to give her the chance to live even though it meant your own death." Thomas felt all the blood drain from his face. How could she possibly know this? How could an alien from across the galaxy know about that moment in the evacuation queue? How could she know the most private, most painful decision of his life? "I do not understand," Thomas said. His voice shook slightly. "How do you know about that?" "I have watched your kind for 73 orbital cycles," Kael'Thera said. I have observed your species. I have studied your behavior, your culture, your choices. I have access to data from your colony's records. I have listened to the stories your people tell. And I have learned to recognize something very rare in the universe. Thomas waited for her to continue, but she fell silent again, still studying him with those vast black eyes. What did you learn? Thomas asked. Kael'Thera's exoskeleton began to glow with deep blues and purples. Your kind is fractured, she said. You are broken in many ways. You wage wars with your own biosphere. You destroy your own home. You abandon your young. You consume resources without replenishing them. You betray each other constantly. You are inefficient, emotional, and frequently irrational. By every measure of logic and civilization, you are failing. Thomas listened to this assessment. Everything she said was true. Humans had done all these things. He could not deny it. Yes, he said quietly. We are not perfect. We make many mistakes. And yet, Kael'Thera continued, moving slowly closer to him, you stood in a queue and chose to give everything to your offspring. You had no guarantee that she would survive. You had no guarantee that your sacrifice would mean anything. And you chose it anyway because you loved her. As she spoke, the color patterns on her exoskeleton began to change more rapidly, cycling through colors in a way that seemed almost frantic or emotional. Across my entire empire, I command billions of beings, Kael'Thera said. I have conquered thousands of star systems. I have engineered civilizations from nothing. I have lived for more than 10,000 of your years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have commanded armies that could destroy entire planets. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter. And I have not encountered the thing you possess in 10,000 years, she said. I have not felt it. I have not witnessed it. I had almost forgotten that it existed. What thing? Thomas asked. His fear had faded, replaced by curiosity and a strange sadness. Purpose, the Empress said. True, unbending purpose that demands nothing in return. Love, your kind calls it. The willingness to sacrifice everything for another being, not because you gain anything, not because of duty or obligation, but simply because that being matters more to you than your own survival. Thomas felt tears forming in his eyes. He thought about Grace. He thought about all the years of struggling to raise her alone. He thought about the nights he had gone hungry so she could eat. He thought about the fear he felt every single day that he would fail her, that he would not be enough. It is just being a parent, Thomas said. It is what parents do. No, Kael'Thera said. It is much more than that. It is something sacred. It is the opposite of everything I have built my civilization upon. We serve through duty. We obey through obligation. We act through calculation and logic. But you? She gestured toward him with one of her limbs. You act through love. You choose through love. And somehow, that makes you stronger than beings with infinitely more power. Thomas did not know what to say. The Empress was treating him as if he were something remarkable, something important. But he was just an old man who had done what any parent would do. I do not understand why you brought me here, Thomas said. What do you want from me? Kael'Thera was silent for a long moment. The colors on her exoskeleton faded to a soft, steady blue. I brought you here because I need to understand, she said finally. I have conquered everything I could conquer. I have achieved everything I could achieve. I have ruled for longer than most civilizations last. And I am alone. She moved closer to Thomas, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. I need to understand how to love, the Empress said. I need to understand how to choose another being over myself. I need to understand how to find purpose in something other than power and conquest. And perhaps. She paused, perhaps you can teach me. Thomas looked up at this vast, ancient, powerful being, and he saw something unexpected in those black eyes. He saw loneliness. He saw the burden of ruling an empire. He saw a being who had everything except the one thing that truly mattered. And in that moment, Thomas understood why she had summoned him. She had not brought him aboard her ship to harm him. She had brought him aboard because, somehow, she recognized in him something her own civilization had lost. The weeks passed slowly aboard the Vorthan flagship. Thomas had been given quarters that were surprisingly comfortable, though the geometry of the rooms still made his head spin sometimes. The walls would shift and change, and doorways would appear in places where there had been none before. But the Vorthans had made an effort to accommodate human biology. There was a bed, a chair, a small table, and a window that looked out onto the stars. Every day, Thomas spent hours in conversation with Kael'Thera. They would meet in the vast circular chamber, or sometimes in smaller rooms designed for more intimate discussion. The Empress would ask him questions and Thomas would answer as honestly as he could. He talked about his life on Earth. He talked about raising Grace alone. He talked about the fears that kept him awake at night, and the joy he felt when his daughter succeeded at something. Meanwhile, back on Harmony Prime, Grace was going crazy with worry and anger. She sent urgent messages to the Vorthan flagship, demanding to know where her father was and why he had been taken. She threatened to disrupt the trade agreements between humans and Vorthans. She demanded his immediate return. The Vorthan Dominion responded by placing Harmony Prime under what they called protective observation. No ships could leave the colony. No outside ships could enter. It was not a hostile action exactly, but it made it clear that the Vorthans were in control. The colony director, Robert Chin, tried to negotiate, but the Vorthans simply repeated their message. Thomas was their guest. He was being treated well. He would be returned when the time was right. Thomas knew none of this. Kael'Thera did not tell him about Grace's messages or about the protective observation. Instead, she focused on their conversations. "Tell me about love," she said one day. "Explain to me how it works." Thomas tried to find the words. "It is not logical," he said. "When you love someone, you stop thinking only about yourself. You think about what is best for them. You worry about them. You want to protect them and help them and make them happy. Sometimes it makes you do things that seem crazy or foolish." "This seems inefficient," Kael'Thera said. Her exoskeleton shifted to a pale yellow color. "If everyone is focused on what is best for others instead of themselves, how does a civilization function?" "It functions differently," Thomas said. "It is not about conquering or controlling. It is about working together. About building something that benefits everyone. About creating a community where people care for each other." Kael'Thera was quiet for a long time. "I have never experienced this," she said finally. "My empire functions through hierarchy and control. Those below me obey because I have power over them. They do not follow me because they love me. They follow me because they fear me." "That must be lonely," Thomas said. The Empress's exoskeleton flashed red. Anger? Or pain? Thomas was beginning to understand that these color changes represented deep emotions. "Yes," Kael'Thera said. "It is very lonely." Thomas told her about the night Grace was born. He described how his heart had nearly exploded with love and fear and wonder all at the same time. He talked about holding her tiny body in his hands and making a promise that he would do everything he could to protect her and help her grow. "That moment changed everything for me," Thomas said. "Before that, I thought life was about achievement and success and personal advancement. But when Grace was born, I realized that life was about love. It was about another person mattering more than anything else." Kael'Thera listened to all of this. She asked question after question. What did it feel like when Grace was hurt? What did it feel like when she succeeded? What did it feel like to know that one day she would grow up and leave him? What did it feel like to sacrifice things for her sake? One day Thomas asked her a question of his own. "Why do you really want to know about love?" he asked. "You have power and control and an entire empire. What do you need love for?" Kael'Thera stood and walked to the window. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. She was silent for so long that Thomas wondered if she would answer at all. "I am 10,000 years old," she said finally. "I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have ruled my empire for 8,000 years. I have conquered more star systems than I can remember. And in all of that time, I have never had anyone who truly cared about me. Everyone serves me out of duty. Everyone fears me. No one loves me." She turned back to face Thomas. "I have everything except the one thing that matters," she said. "And I suspect that without love, all of my power and all of my conquest means nothing." Thomas felt a deep sadness for this ancient being. Despite her power and her age and her vast intelligence, she was alone in a way that Thomas had never been. Even when he was struggling to raise Grace alone, he had her love. Even when he was terrified, he had her. The Empress had neither. "I think you are beginning to understand something important," Thomas said. "Real power is not about control or conquest. Real power is about connection. It is about matching to someone. It is about knowing that your life has meaning because it touches other lives." Before Kael'Thera could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the chamber. Vorthan guards rushed in, speaking rapidly to the Empress in their own language, their exoskeletons flashing with urgent colors. Thomas could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Something was wrong. Kael'Thera turned to look at him. "Your daughter has taken control of the colony's communication system," she said. "She is broadcasting a message to every ship and station in the sector. She is demanding your release. She is threatening to destroy the trade agreements and begin hostile action against the Vorthan Dominion if you are not returned safely. Thomas felt his heart leap into his throat. Grace. His brave, brilliant, beautiful daughter had decided to fight an entire empire to get him back. I must go, Thomas said. I must speak with her. I must tell her to stop. You cannot let her destroy everything because of me. No, Keltera said. Her exoskeleton glowed with deep blues and purples, colors that Thomas was beginning to recognize as emotion. I think it is time that you return to your daughter. I think it is time that I learned what it means to let someone go. She moved toward him and placed one of her limbs gently on his shoulder. It was the first time she had ever touched him. Go back to Grace, the Empress said. Go back to your colony. But know this, Thomas. You have taught me something that 10,000 years of conquest never could. You have shown me that there is a different way to live. The shuttle descended through Harmony Prime's atmosphere with Thomas sitting alone in the passenger compartment. Through the window he could see the green forests and blue oceans of the colony. He was going home. He was going back to Grace. But as the shuttle landed, Thomas knew that nothing would be simple. Keltera had made an offer before he left the flagship, and that offer weighed heavily on his mind. She had asked him to stay with her. She had offered him a position as an advisor and counselor in the Vorthan Dominion. She had offered him advanced technology that could extend his life far beyond normal human limits. She had offered him the chance to help guide an entire civilization toward a new way of thinking, a way based on understanding and connection instead of conquest and control. It was an extraordinary offer. It was the kind of offer that most people would accept immediately. With such power and such purpose, Thomas could change the galaxy. He could help millions of beings understand love and connection. He could reshape the Vorthan Empire into something better, something kinder. But it meant leaving Harmony Prime. It meant leaving Grace. It meant committing to a life spent light years away from his daughter, communicating only through messages that took weeks or months to arrive. It meant missing the everyday moments, the simple joys of being together. Grace was waiting for him at the landing pad. She ran toward the shuttle as soon as the door opened, her dark curls flying behind her. She was crying and laughing at the same time. Thomas stepped out and caught her in his arms, holding her close. Dad, she cried. I was so scared. I did not know what they wanted from you. I did not know if you were alive. I could not just leave you there. I know, Thomas said, holding his daughter tightly. You were very brave. You were very strong. But you took a terrible risk. You challenged an empire that could destroy this entire colony. I do not care, Grace said, pulling back to look at him. You are my father. You are more important than anything else. I would have fought them all to get you back. Thomas looked at his daughter's face, seeing the love and determination in her eyes. He thought about Keltera, standing alone in her vast chamber, commanding billions but loved by none. He thought about the choice before him. Robert Chin arrived within the hour, along with several other colony officials. They were anxious and uncertain about what had happened. Were the Vorthans a threat? Would there be retaliation for Grace's messages? The Empress wishes to speak with you, one of the Vorthan officers told Thomas. A communication screen was set up, and moments later, Keltera's image appeared. Her exoskeleton shimmered with colors of deep blue and green. I have a proposition, Keltera said without preamble. I am establishing a permanent cultural embassy here on Harmony Prime. I will visit regularly. I wish to learn more about your species, your values, and your approach to life. And I wish for you to be my primary teacher and advisor. Robert Chin leaned forward. Is this an invasion? He asked carefully. No, Keltera said. It is an exchange of knowledge and culture. I have ruled through conquest for thousands of years. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach. Perhaps it is time to build something through cooperation instead of force. She looked directly at Thomas through the screen. I am offering you a position here on your colony, she continued. You would advise me on matters of culture and philosophy. You would help me understand your people better. You would help me learn how to lead through connection instead of control. And you would do this while remaining with your daughter. Thomas felt tears forming in his eyes. She was giving him a choice. She was offering him a way to help change an empire without sacrificing his relationship with Grace. What is the cost? Thomas asked. There is always a cost. The cost, Keltera said slowly, is that I will never again rule through fear alone. I will never again conquer without consent. I will never again be the sole power in my empire. My advisors will have voices. My subjects will have rights. I will become a different kind of leader. That is the cost. That is what I am willing to give. Over the following months, changes began to happen on Harmony Prime. A Vorthan embassy was constructed near the colony, a building that seemed to exist between dimensions, beautiful and strange. Kael'Terra visited regularly, sometimes spending weeks on the planet, learning about human culture and values. She attended colony celebrations and festivals. She tasted human food, though her alien biology could not actually digest it. She watched humans play and work and love each other. She observed the way parents raised their children. She listened to stories and music and poetry. Grace became the primary liaison between humans and Vorthans. Her linguistic talents were put to use in ways she never could have imagined. She helped translate not just words but concepts and values. She helped Kael'Terra understand the complexity of human emotion and human society. Thomas spent his afternoons with the Empress, sitting in the gardens of the embassy or walking through the colony. They talked about philosophy and purpose and meaning. They discussed how to lead without dominating, how to build without destroying, how to connect without controlling. One afternoon, as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red, Kael'Terra said something that surprised Thomas. "I am beginning to understand what you meant by love," she said. "It is not romantic love only. It is the connection that binds a community together. It is the willingness to value another being's existence as much as your own. It is the foundation of a truly great civilization." "Yes," Thomas said. "That is exactly what it is." "I wasted 10,000 years pursuing power," Kael'Terra said. Her exoskeleton glowed softly with blues and purples. "I could have been building connection instead. I could have been creating a civilization based on love and understanding instead of fear and control. I could have had so much more. But you are changing now," Thomas said. "That is what matters. It is never too late to choose a different path." Years passed. Thomas grew older, his hair remaining white, his body slowing. But his mind remained sharp, and his connection with both his daughter and the Empress remained strong. Grace had children of her own eventually, and Thomas watched his grandchildren play with young Vorthans, two species learning to understand and appreciate each other. The Vorthan dominion began to change slowly. Word spread from Kael'Terra's empire to neighboring civilizations about their new approach to leadership and cooperation. Other species began to take notice. Trade increased. Alliances formed based on mutual respect instead of military might. It all began with a single choice. A choice made by an old human in an evacuation queue, choosing to sacrifice everything for his daughter. That choice had rippled across time and space, touching the life of an ancient empress, and ultimately changing the trajectory of entire civilizations. In the end, humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their intelligence. It was their willingness to choose love again and again, no matter the cost. And when that willingness reached across the stars and touched another being, it had the power to transform worlds.